Wayne stood in front of the church, his breath sharp in his throat, like he'd swallowed glass. The stone steps beneath his feet had seen more lies than vows. He had walked this path once before, not long ago, when he believed he was about to start his forever. That time, Mary had been waiting inside. The sky looked sick, grey, dim, heavy, like it wanted to cry for him but didn't know how. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the old wedding band, still warm from his hand. It was scratched, dull, nearly forgotten, but never really gone. He stared at it for a moment, then tossed it toward the church door. It bounced, rolled, and stopped near the threshold, like it was too scared to enter. Still, holding on to ghosts, a soft voice came from behind. He didn't have to turn. He knew it was Ernestina. She had a way of showing up when the silence got too loud. When Mary had left him at the altar, 10 months ago to the day, Ernestina was the one who peeled him off the church floor, piece by broken piece. Wayne gave a slow exhale. I don't know if I'm holding on, or just refusing to forget. Ernestina walked to his side, arms folded across her chest, coat flapping in the light wind. That woman burned you down and then blamed the ashes. He half smiled. She didn't lie about loving me, just about how long it would last. They both looked at the church. Inside, there were 10 empty altars. Tiny shrines built for the weddings that never happened here. The town used to call it cursed. Superstition, they'd said. But Wayne knew. Better. It wasn't curses. It was people walking in with their hearts on fire and walking out with smoke in their lungs. She wrote to me, he said suddenly. Ernestina flinched. Mary, he nodded. Said she regretted everything. Said she was finding herself and that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. And what did you say? I didn't. I couldn't. What do you even say to that? Ernestina didn't answer. They stood in silence for a while, the only sound the faint flutter of wind tugging at their clothes. Then the doors creaked open. Gerald stepped out, sharp in a dark suit, boutonniere pinned neatly on his chest. He looked like a man who knew what love cost, and paid it anyway. Wayne straightened. Time? Gerald nodded. They're ready. She's ready. Ernestina touched Wayne's shoulder. You sure you want this? You can still walk away. No, shame in it. Wayne looked down the aisle, past the flickering candles, and the hollow silence of the church's stained glass stair. He didn't see ghosts anymore. He saw something else. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was just the absence of pain. I've burned enough bridges, he said quietly. This time I walked through the fire with my eyes open. They walked in together, Gerald ahead, Wayne behind him. Ernestina lingering at the back. The chapel smelled of lilies and wax. The altar looked the same, but today it didn't feel like a graveyard. Today, it felt like a threshold. At the end of the aisle stood a woman not dressed in white, but in soft silver. Her hair pinned back in curls, her eyes steady and calm. Not Mary, someone better. Wayne stopped. Time twisted for just a second. He could almost hear Mary's voice, the way she'd laughed on the day they chose this church. He could almost feel the weight of her hand in his. Almost, but he didn't flinch. He stepped forward, past the shadows of what could have been, and in that moment, the air felt cleaner. She smiled at him, and he saw not the girl he once loved, but the woman he deserved, and he smiled back. The ceremony was quiet, almost too quiet. No choir, no orchestra, no fake tears from guests who barely knew their names. Just soft music humming in the background and the rustle of nervous hands. Wayne stood beside her. Ariana, her name. Strong, jawline, eyes that had seen war in the shape of betrayal. Hands that held on like they meant it. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't fragile. And she sure as hell wasn't Mary. The priest began to speak, but Wayne's thoughts drifted. He wasn't distracted by nerves. He was remembering. Mary had stood in the same spot, just inches away, trembling like a leaf caught between two winds. He remembered how tightly she'd held his hand. Right before she let it go, she had walked out 5 minutes before they said, "I do." No warning, no tears, just silence. And then the echo of her heels, disappearing down the marble aisle. She never turned around. Wayne blinked hard. Ariana's fingers tightened gently around his. She felt the shift in him, the way his breath changed. And she didn't ask him to stop thinking about the past. She didn't try to erase it. She just held on. The priest was saying something about vows now. But Wayne wasn't listening to the words. He was watching Ariana, the way she didn't flinch, the way she met his gaze, like they were already in the middle of something unbreakable. It was his turn. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out at first. He looked at her, then past her. The altars behind them stood like quiet reminders of all the love stories that had collapsed right here. 10 of them. 10 couples who had once stood exactly where he was now, each believing their love would be different. His voice came out low but steady. "I've stood here before, with someone else. I said yes with my lips, but I didn't know then what it meant to promise someone forever. I thought love was just wanting, needing, giving, until there was nothing left." Ariana didn't move. She just listened. But now, "I know love is staying even when the flame is low. It's not just dancing in the light. It's holding hands. In the dark. You taught me that." Quietly, patiently, a faint smile touched her lips. But she didn't interrupt. "So this time, if I walk out of this church, it won't be because I'm running. It'll be with you, and it'll be forward." He took a deep breath. "I promise not perfection, just presence. I promise not fireworks, but fire. The kind that stays warm when everything else goes cold." A few heads turned in the crowd, not because of his words, but because they remembered the last time he was up here. Whispers had circled for months. "Poor Wayne," they used to say, "left at the altar, twice shy." But now there was only stillness. Ariana's voice was softer than his, but it didn't tremble. "I'm not afraid of your past," she said. "I don't need clean pages. I just want a story that keeps being written." She paused. "You don't owe me a perfect man, just a real one. And I'll be real with you, even when it's hard." The priest nodded slightly, clearly touched. But Wayne barely noticed him anymore. He only saw Ariana, the woman who didn't flinch when he talked about the fire, the one who didn't need to sweep up his ashes to love him through the rebuilding. As the rings were exchanged, someone coughed in the back row. Wayne caught sight of Ernestina leaning against the far wall, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She was here, not out of obligation, but out of quiet loyalty. She had watched him shatter. Now she was watching him rise. Mary wasn't here. He didn't expect her to be, but she had written to him last week. The letter was long, apologetic, confused, full of regret. She said she still dreamed of the wedding sometimes, that she wondered what would have happened if she'd stayed. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. A kiss. Soft, short, not cinematic, just enough. They turned, hand in hand, and walked back down the aisle, this time, together. No ghost pulling at his coat, no broken promises whispering in his ear. Just Ariana, beside him, one altar no longer empty. Outside, the light had shifted. The grey clouds hadn't moved much, but somehow the world didn't look as heavy. Maybe it was just how Wayne was breathing now. Easier, fuller. The guests started to spill out of the church, slow and scattered, like they weren't sure if the ceremony was really over, like they were still waiting for the part where everything collapsed. But Wayne kept walking. Ariana's fingers stayed laced through his, like she knew he needed the pressure to stay grounded. He glanced at her. "You okay?" She tilted her head. "You're the one who looked like he was walking through a haunted house." He let out a low laugh, tired but real. It kind of felt like that. Ariana didn't say anything to comfort him. She just gave him a look. One of those quiet stares that said, "I saw it all, and I stayed anyway." They reached the car. Gerald was already waiting by the passenger door, leaning back against the hood like he had nothing better to do. Always calm, always unreadable. "You survived," Gerald said dryly. "Not done surviving yet," Wayne replied. Gerald gave him a half smile. "You're not the same guy who got left behind." Wayne studied him for a second. "Yeah, I guess I finally stopped waiting for her to come back." Ariana slipped into the back seat, while Wayne walked around to the driver's side. He took a second before opening the door, looking at the church again. There were still people, lingering, some smiling politely, others pretending not to be whispering. He didn't care, not anymore. The car ride was quiet for a few minutes. Then Ariana spoke up. "She's going to reach out again, you know." Wayne didn't answer right away. "She already did." A pause. "Recently?" Ariana asked. "Yeah." "What did she say?" "That she misses me. That she messed up. That she never should have walked away." Ariana didn't react much, just stared out the window. "Do you still miss her?" Wayne tightened his grip on the wheel. Not because he was lying, but because the truth was complicated. "I miss the version of her I thought was real," he said. "I miss the idea of her more than the person." Ariana nodded, like she understood more than she let on. "That's fair." They stopped at a red light. Outside, an older couple was crossing the street slowly, their fingers interlocked. Wayne watched them. "I used to think love was about intensity," he said. "About big gestures, dramatic confessions, passion that doesn't stop burning." "And now?" Ariana asked. "Now I think it's about who stays when the fire gets low." She smiled faintly. "That's the only kind of love I've got to offer." "That's the only kind I want," he replied. Gerald coughed lightly from the passenger seat. "You two are disgustingly cute. I hope you know that." Ariana grinned. "Shut up, Gerald." Wayne laughed, and it felt like dust shaking off his chest. They drove through the town, past the cafe where he and Mary had once planned their honeymoon, past the bookstore where she used to hide notes in the novels for him to find. Every corner of this place still had pieces of her, but for the first time, he didn't want them gone. He just didn't want to carry them anymore. They reached the small reception hall. Modest, warm, nothing fancy. No chandeliers or ice sculptures, just long tables, candles, and the scent of roasted lamb drifting from the kitchen. Ernestina was already there, sipping red wine and watching everything from the corner, like a hawk in heels. Wayne approached her while Ariana disappeared to check the seating. "You came," he said softly. She arched an eyebrow. "I'm not a coward. Unlike someone we both know." He smirked. "You think she ever really loved me?" Ernestina swirled her wine. "I think she loved what you gave her, but she didn't know how to love you when it stopped feeling easy." He let that settle. "Do you hate her?" he asked. "I don't have time to waste on hate," she replied. "I just stopped making space for people who walk out." Wayne looked at her, really looked. She'd been there through the worst of it, when he stopped sleeping, when he stopped smiling, when he almost started drinking again. "Thank you," he said. Ernestina looked down, her face softer than usual. "Don't thank me yet. I've still got a speech to give, and I've had 3 glasses of wine." Wayne laughed again, louder this time. Ariana returned, reached for his hand. "Ready?" she asked. "For what?" "To make this real." He looked around. The people who stayed, the ones who mattered. The altar was behind him now, and in front of him, something new was unfolding. Not perfect, but real. The night settled in like a secret too big to whisper. Inside the reception hall, laughter started bubbling up between glasses of wine and warm plates of food. But for Wayne, everything moved slower, like the world had finally allowed him to breathe, but wanted him to feel every inch of the air in his lungs. He looked around the room, unsure if he recognized the man everyone was smiling at. A few old friends from college, a couple of co-workers who had stayed loyal even when he'd become a shell of himself, and in the corner, his mother. Her hands folded like she was praying he wouldn't fall apart again. Ariana stood next to him, holding a glass of champagne but barely sipping it. She wasn't the kind of woman who needed attention, and she just existed in her own gravity. And that gravity had pulled him out of places so dark, he still sometimes doubted he'd ever left. The DJ cracked a joke, someone clapped, and the music began. Nothing cheesy, nothing grand, just a soft rhythm that filled the room without swallowing it. A few couples got up to dance. Wayne stayed seated, watching, thinking. Then he saw her, Mary. She stood by the entrance, half shadowed by the doorframe. No invitation, no warning. Her eyes darted, like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to be here, or just couldn't help herself. She looked different, thinner maybe, her hair shorter, but it was her. And the moment she locked eyes with him, time collapsed for a heartbeat. Wayne didn't move, didn't blink. Ariana noticed. Her hand brushed his shoulder. "Is that her?" He nodded slowly. Ariana didn't ask if he wanted to talk. She didn't offer to leave. She just stood up and said, "Handle it. I'll be by the cake." That was the difference. Mary had always needed reassurance, explanations. Ariana just needed truth. Wayne stood and walked toward the door. Mary looked like she wanted to smile, but couldn't figure out how. "Congratulations," she said, voice almost inaudible under the music. He waited. "I thought I'd regret coming," she added, "but I think I would have regretted staying away more." He nodded, quiet. "Why now?" "I had to see it for myself," she said. "That you were okay, that you moved on." He tilted his head slightly. "You didn't think I could?" She looked down. "I wasn't sure. You were so broken." "I was," he agreed, "but not anymore." Mary stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, Wayne. I left because I was scared of how much I did. I wasn't ready to be that person. I didn't know how to hold on to something without destroying it." He stared at her, long and hard. "Then why write to me?" "Because I wanted to believe there was still a version of us that made sense." He took a slow breath. "There isn't. Not anymore." Mary blinked, but didn't cry. "She's good for you." "She's better than good," he replied. "She saw me when all I had were pieces." Mary's lip trembled slightly. "I'm sorry, Wayne." "I know," he said, "but you don't get to be sorry and also be here." That hurt her. She didn't hide it. Wayne stepped back. "You're not the villain, just the chapter I had to survive." She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. She turned, walked out slowly, head bowed, and he didn't follow. When he returned to the table, Ariana handed him a plate of cake without asking any questions. He took it. Gerald raised a brow from across the room. "That her?" "Yeah," Wayne said. "And she's gone." Gerald gave a satisfied nod. "Good." Wayne looked at Ariana. She didn't need to know the details. She just smiled, leaned into him slightly, and whispered, Still with me. He kissed the top of her head. Always. The night continued. Louder now. Speeches, dancing, bad jokes. But something had shifted inside Wayne, like the last chain had finally snapped. He wasn't just married, he was free. The dance floor came alive, like it had been waiting for permission. People who barely knew each other were twirling with the kind of reckless joy that only came after heartbreak had been buried deep enough to stop bleeding. Wayne didn't usually dance. He never had. But that night, something in him stirred. The kind of wild, unfamiliar peace that made you want to move just to prove your body wasn't made of grief anymore. Ariana held out her hand. No words. Just a look. Wayne took it. They walked onto the floor, past tables littered with wine glasses and abandoned jackets, past guests who paused to smile as if witnessing something bigger than a wedding, something like redemption. The music was soft at first, but the beat picked up. Ariana's dress shimmered faintly under the lights. Her eyes locked on his. She didn't lead and she didn't follow. She just moved with him, like two people who had finally stopped waiting for the world to give them permission to feel good again. You're not bad at this, she teased. I'm not good either, Wayne said, laughing. Yeah, but you're better than you were at trusting anyone. He grinned, the words hitting deeper than she probably meant them to. They danced for a while, awkward at times, quiet at others, but never forced. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a familiar voice cut through the music. I was right. You do look better without her. Wayne turned to see Ernestina, holding 2 glasses of scotch, walking toward them with that trademark smirk, like she'd been watching the whole thing from a sniper's nest. Ernestina, Ariana said, smiling. You made it off the wine. Briefly, she replied, handing 1 glass to Wayne. To toast the man who finally stopped confusing comfort with love. Wayne raised the glass, but didn't drink yet. You always this poetic? Ernestina leaned in, voice low. I saw her leave. Mary. Wayne didn't flinch. She didn't belong here. She never did. She liked being adored more than she liked being loved. Ernestina said plainly. Ariana blinked at her. That's accurate. Ernestina sipped her drink, eyes narrowing. But don't kid yourself. There's a part of him that still wonders why he wasn't enough for her. Wayne didn't deny it. Ariana looked at him gently. Is that true? He met her gaze. I stopped asking why. I started asking who I wanted to be without her. That's a better question, Ernestina said, raising her glass. To who we become after the wreckage. They clinked glasses. No cheers. No loud toasts. Just the weight of survival, disguised as celebration. Later, after the dancing slowed and the guests started making their polite exits, Wayne stood outside with Gerald, under a pale yellow porch light. The air was cooler. Now, the sky bruised with stars. Gerald lit a cigarette, offered Wayne one. He declined. She really left without causing a scene? Gerald asked. She knew better, Wayne said. Gerald exhaled. You think you'll ever stop carrying pieces of her? Wayne looked up at the sky. I think. She'll always be part of the story, but not the chapter I reread. Good, Gerald said. You're different now. Stronger. No, Wayne replied. Just tired of bleeding for people who won't stop cutting. Gerald chuckled, almost proudly. You sound like her now. Who? Ernestina. Wayne smiled. She taught me a few things. Back inside, Ariana was packing up gifts, laughing with someone's grandmother, looking like she belonged there more than Mary ever did. And for a second, Wayne just watched her. This woman who didn't try to fix him, didn't try to erase what had come before. She just stood with him while he healed. And maybe that's what love really was. Not rescuing, just staying. He walked over to her, wrapped his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him, warm and steady. "Tell me this is real," he whispered. She turned, touched his face. "It's more than real. It's ours." The music faded. The lights dimmed. The guests disappeared one by one. But Wayne and Ariana didn't need anyone to stay. They had each other now. And this time, no one was walking out. The car ride back to their small rented cottage was quiet. But it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. It was the kind of silence that sits between two people who don't need to fill every second with noise to feel close. Ariana rested her head against the window, her hand resting in Wayne's lap. The ring on her finger glinted in the moonlight. Wayne drove slowly, like rushing would break whatever spell they were in. "Feels like we just crossed over into something else," Ariana murmured, eyes still on the dark stretch of road ahead. "We did," Wayne said, glancing at her. "It's like I left a version of myself behind at that altar." She looked at him now, her voice soft. "The version that needed her," he nodded. "The version that thought I was only worth loving if I could be everything someone else wanted." Ariana didn't speak right away. When she did, her words came carefully. "You know, I saw the look in your eyes when she showed up." Wayne didn't deny it. "Yeah, you looked like a man who'd just seen his own ghost." He gripped the wheel tighter, because that's exactly what it felt like. They pulled up to the cottage. It was tucked away from the rest of the world. Quiet, dimly lit, surrounded by trees that whispered in the wind like they were keeping secrets. Wayne parked, turned off the engine, and they sat in the stillness for a moment before Ariana finally opened the door. Inside, everything smelled faintly of cedarwood and vanilla. The fireplace had been set earlier by someone from the venue staff, and a small fire still crackled low in the hearth. It was warm, safe. Wayne dropped his jacket over the back of a chair and loosened his tie. Ariana walked into the kitchen and returned with 2 mugs of warm cider, handing him one without a word. She sat down cross-legged on the rug near the fire, and he followed. They didn't talk for a long time. The fire did all the speaking. Then, quietly, Wayne broke the silence. She said she wasn't ready to love someone the way I needed to be loved. Ariana looked into her cup. "That's honest, at least." "I think she was afraid," he continued. "Not just of me, of herself, of what it would mean to stay." Ariana met his eyes. "People like that, they don't break you all at once. They chip away at you so slowly that by the time you realize you're hollow, it feels like it's your fault." Wayne swallowed hard. "Exactly. She didn't leave because you were too much. She left because she wasn't enough for what you were becoming." Wayne didn't know if she meant to say something so heavy, so precise, but it hit like truth always does, quiet and sharp. He reached out, took her hand. "I think a part of me still wonders if I'd be sitting here with you if she hadn't left," he said. Ariana didn't flinch. "Probably not," he blinked. "And I'm okay with that," she added. "I'm not here to erase her. I'm just here to build something new with the man who survived her." Wayne leaned in and kissed her, slow, steady, with the weight of everything they'd both carried to get here. When he pulled back, his voice was low. "I don't want to survive anymore. I want to live." "Then let's start living," she said. They curled up in front of the fire, not like newlyweds in a movie, but like 2 people who had lost too much to ever take comfort for granted again. Outside, the wind howled once, then faded. Wayne didn't look back anymore. He had walked through every empty altar and every lie, and now finally, he had someone who didn't need saving, only holding, only staying. The next morning brought a kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. It felt earned, the kind of stillness that came after the storm had passed. and left nothing behind except truth. Light slipped in through the curtains, warm and golden, casting long lines across the wooden floor. Wayne woke up first. Ariana was still asleep beside him, her breathing slow and even, her hair a gentle mess across the pillow. He watched her for a moment. Not in the romantic way people do in movies, but in that raw, holy shit. This is real kind of way. There was no need to rush, no weight pressing down on his chest. Just the sound of a woman sleeping in peace beside, a man who used to carry too many regrets. He slid out of bed quietly and made his way to the kitchen. Coffee brewed slowly. He didn't mind waiting. He leaned on the counter, looking out through the window as the trees swayed lazily. This little cabin wasn't big, but it held more warmth than the massive house he once almost bought with Mary. Back then, he thought square footage could fix broken hearts. He heard footsteps behind him, soft and familiar. "Smells good," Ariana mumbled, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He turned and kissed the top of her head. "Didn't want to wake you. I like waking up to you," she whispered. Wayne handed her a mug, and they stood in the kitchen together. No small talk, just heat from the coffee, and the kind of silence that feels like a blanket. After breakfast, they took a walk through the woods behind the cottage. Leaves crunched under their shoes, and birds called lazily from above. Everything around them felt like a reminder that life could still be beautiful after ruin. They stopped at a small clearing where the trees opened just enough to let the sky in. Ariana sat on a log, pulling Wayne down next to her. "I need to ask you something," she said, looking serious. He tensed a little, but nodded. "Okay. If she came back tomorrow, really came back, not just a letter, stood in front of you and said she was ready now, would you still choose me?" Wayne didn't answer immediately. He looked at the sky through the branches, then back at her. "I'd tell her she's too late," he said simply, "because I'm not the man she left behind. I'm not waiting at that altar anymore." Ariana let out a slow breath. "Good. Would you have stayed?" he asked. "If it had been you standing there that day, watching someone else walk away?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, but not because I'm stronger than you. Because I don't run when things get messy. I sit in the mess until it makes sense." He nodded. "That's what you did with me." "I didn't do anything heroic," she said. "I just saw you, the real you, even under all the pain." Wayne took her hand. "That's more than anyone's ever done." They sat in that clearing for a while, talking about nothing and everything. Childhood stories, random memories, the worst meals they ever had, the first time each of them really got their heart broken. Wayne didn't hide anything anymore. He didn't soften the ugly parts of his past or pretend the wounds had healed perfectly. And Ariana didn't flinch. She listened, asked questions when it mattered, and stayed quiet when it didn't. That night, back at the cottage, they lit the fireplace again. Wayne pulled out a small box from his bag. Not a ring. He'd already given her that. This was something else. He opened it slowly. Inside was a key. Ariana raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "A new place," Wayne said. "Out in Ridge Hollow. Quiet town. Good light in the mornings. No memories." She looked at him surprised. "You bought a house." "I bought us a home," he said. "I don't want to build a future in the same town where I buried my past." Ariana touched the key. "You really are letting it go, huh?" He nodded. "I'm done lighting candles for people who never came back." She leaned into him, resting, her head against his shoulder. "So this is what healing feels like." "No," Wayne whispered, wrapping his arms around her. "This is what choosing better feels like." The fire crackled softly behind them, and for the first time in a long, long time, nothing was missing. 3 months later, the new house smelled like fresh paint and the beginning of something good. Ridge Hollow wasn't much. A quiet town with crooked sidewalks and a bakery that still rang a bell when the door opened. But for Wayne and Ariana, it was enough. It was theirs. The move had been quiet. No fanfare. No big announcement. Just one morning, they locked the cottage, got in the car, and never looked back. The house wasn't huge. 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, windows that actually let in morning light instead of gloom. There was no attic filled with ghosts. No basement echoing with regrets. Just blank walls, waiting for real memories to be made. Ariana had already picked out where the bookshelves would go. Wayne had claimed the corner by the back window for his writing desk, even if he hadn't written a single word since they got there. Some days, silence still crept in. Grief doesn't die, it just loses its voice. But the difference now was, it didn't stay long. Ariana never asked Wayne to be happy all the time. She just asked him to be honest. And that was something he could finally give. One rainy evening, he stood barefoot in the kitchen, watching the drops race down the window pane. Ariana was curled up on the couch, a blanket around her, reading with that little frown she made when the story got too good to put down. "You know," he said softly, "there's a version of my life where I married her." Ariana didn't look up. "I know. She would have made a beautiful bride." Ariana turned the page. "But she couldn't have made a life with you." Wayne nodded slowly. "It still hits me sometimes, out of nowhere, that I almost spent forever with someone who only loved the idea of me. She wanted the shine, not the shape." Ariana said, finally meeting his eyes. "But I love the shape, even when it's jagged." He walked over and sat beside her. "And what if I get jagged again? Then I'll bleed with you, but I won't leave." There it was again. That solid truth in her. She wasn't afraid of the ruins. She lived in them. Turned them into homes. Wayne took her hand. "I want to write again." Ariana smiled. "Then write. Start from the beginning, if you have to." He stood, walked over to his desk by the window, and opened his notebook. The page was empty, white, blinding. But it didn't scare him anymore. He picked up his pen. 10 empty altars. He paused, looked over at Ariana. "Reborn, I burned the past, and walked down the aisle with someone better." The words didn't feel like fiction. They felt like a grave marker for what he'd let go, and a flag planted in the future he was, choosing every day. Later that night, they sat on the back porch. No talking, just the sound of frogs croaking and wind brushing through the trees. Wayne reached for Ariana's hand, and she gave it to him without question. He looked up at the stars. "I think I'm finally proud of the man I've become," he said. Ariana leaned against his shoulder. "Then maybe it's time to stop looking back." He nodded. "Yeah, maybe it is." Somewhere behind them, Mary still existed. So did the church, the letters, the 10 altars. All of it. But none of it lived here. Not anymore. This place, this porch, this peace, this was his now. And no one could take it. He kissed Ariana's hand. "You know, I never got to take you on a real honeymoon." She smiled. "We've been living one ever since you walked away from what hurt you." He laughed softly. "Then I guess I'm finally home." The night went quiet again. But this time, it was the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a promise. The past was buried. The story had changed. And for Wayne, it had finally found its ending. Or maybe its real beginning. The end.